So yeah.
I
No.
hope it's okay with everyone if we can record the session. When we write the notes, you will not be, your name will not be mentioned. We'll keep the anonymity, but we'll be happy to record the session for the sake of reporting.
Wonderful, thank you. And Lubang, do you have the presentation? Because I just see the group session structure here. Do you have
Yes,
access?
we have the presentation, and my colleague Isabel is just going to help to present that.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone from the session who would like to support in moderating, or should I just keep on doing it and then we give the floor to the presenter, to Kate? Okay, then I guess silence sometimes means consent. So I will just say, like, Kate, the floor is yours. Go ahead with the presentation. We are so happy to hear from you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Lubang, and thank you to all of you. It's a real privilege to be able to share some of our work with you. So I'm sharing a model of eco-justice activity and activism with you, and it comes from the Southern African Faith Communities Environment Institute, and it happened because in 2005 people were still saying, what has religion got to do with the environment? And coming from the background that I came from, it seemed so obvious, and yet it was a question that people were asking. Next slide, please. So the question we asked was why do people of faith, are they not concerned about sustainability when we know there's an ecological crisis, and that we know that creation is very good, and that across all the faith traditions, we're called to be earth keepers, stewards, caliphs in the Islamic tradition. If we read the scriptures with green spectacles, we see so many symbols and metaphors from nature that we draw from so much. And then particularly in this part of the world, our formal education systems are so inadequate that we really felt that churches and religious centers should become centers of lifelong learning about sustainability. Next slide, please. So why have they been so silent? Next, please. So I ask you to look at these images and I say, which image would your faith community identify with? And it was so fascinating hearing our two key speakers to begin with, because this really drew out this different way of viewing the world. So on the left-hand side, we have the human-centered, anthropocentric-centered perspective, and on the right-hand side is the ecocentric, interconnected and earth-centered perspective of the way that we view the world. Next slide, please. So if we look at the different approaches to how we view nature, in Eastern spirituality, humans are essentially in balance and part of nature. They see that as the way they view the world. And in African spirituality, there's a spiritual presence in all of nature. In Western spirituality, we have this anthropocentric, human-centered worldview. And then I added secular materialism, which has really become a religion, where nature is seen as its economic value. And we keep hearing conversations about the green economy, in which we're entitled to take what we want and profit from it. Next slide, please. So why are many faiths still silent? And I think this diagram gives us a key to that man is viewed as the pinnacle of creation in the Abrahamic faith particularly. And we've lost touch and no longer work with nature. And as has been referred to earlier, we're often more concerned about salvation out of the world than living in it. And this was a real concern to the group of people who started this organization that we run. Thank you. Next slide. So the rationale for eco theology is that we're part of the web of life. And we're interdependent and interconnected. And I always like this because woman and man are embedded in this wonderful depiction of this web. So we believe that an eco-centered spirituality will help heal our relationships with the earth and with each other. Thank you. Next. So the way we treat others, if we look at the golden rule, all major faith traditions are based on compassion and the golden rule, which is treat others as we would have them treat us. Thank you. Next. So we come back again to why have faiths been so silent about nature for so long? And in our experience, we have found that there's no mandate from the leadership structures of faiths to actually engage in this whole concern about nature. And the narrative has often been about salvation rather than stewardship. And then there's this whole concern about the lack of environmental knowledge. Science has been such a dominant narrative, and religion has not actually, the voice of religion has not been able to be heard. And yet we often act from our heart, not that we know what's right, but from what we feel what's right. And so this conversation between science and religion, we believe, is so very important. Often lay champions in congregations don't have the agency because of the hold that the leadership often have on the congregation. So we believe that is a real challenge for people in congregations who feel they want to take action. And then certainly in South Africa and in other places as well, the perception that greening and conservation is really a middle class and privileged issue. And I think now people are really beginning to understand the link between the importance of things like clean water and clean air. And that's beginning to build an understanding amongst all people that caring for the world is significant and is not just a privileged perspective. Thank you. Next. So in 2005, we established the Southern African Faith Communities Environment Institute, and many of you will recognize Wangari Maathai, who launched our organization. Next, please. And we established a multi-faith organization which supports and encourages Southern African faith leaders to increase awareness and understanding of faith-based responsibility to care for creation and to live more sustainably, and to become change agents and eco-justice activists. And we felt particularly that essence of change agents and eco-justice activists. We stand for justice, and yet we're not becoming activists. So this is a really important underpinning perspective on the work that we do. Next, please. And we've worked at different levels. One is working with faith leadership, and the other is working with grassroots champions. Next, please. Amongst the faith leadership, we really have tried to encourage faith leaders to practice ethical governance and advocate for challenging leadership to really underpin everything that's done through a matter of ethics. We call on faith leaders to issue statements and resolutions about eco-justice. And then we encourage faith leaders to support their pastors, their imams, their preachers and teachers to take actions in local congregations and in their local communities. Next, please. So I've just got a series of photographs to show you some of the things that we've done. We work with local religious leaders fora. Next. This was a meeting we had before COP in 2011 with faith leaders from the whole of sub-Saharan Africa at the UNEP Center in Nairobi. Next. speaking out at climate talks. This is a panel of religious leaders at the COP that was hosted in Durban. Next. Working with young faith leaders. Next. And then working from the grassroots level, we built a program that was really trying to encourage different areas of participation. One was around worship and celebration, then there was resource management, and then was local and global community action. So I'm just going to run through a few pictures of those. Thank you. Next. Encouraging the celebration of environmental and special days. Next. Symbolic tree planting ceremonies. Next. There are many others, but there's no time to share those, but you can imagine building environmental actions into worship, celebration, and study. The next is around resource management in the grassroots level. Next picture. So one of the most important things is that there is collective decision making about action in congregations. And we really support that this isn't just an individual champion-led thing, but it must be actions that are decisions that are made collectively. Next. And these are some of the areas that we've really highlighted. For instance, buildings affirm traditional heritage using local materials, designs, and skills. And it's really important that we don't just copy the history of where the colonial missionaries have come from, that this was a really beautiful building built out of local materials by local people with skills of stone laying and thatching and things like that. So this is one area where we just are not thinking, particularly in this region, about using local skills. Next.
Kate, may I
Yes.
just very quickly step in and ask you to come to the end soon?
Oh, okay. Let's go through, because I want to show you a quick video clip. So let's just keep going.
Okay.
And I'll stop. These are just examples. Keep going. You can just see these. Okay. Right. I'd like to go back to the previous one. So this is a video which I'd like you to show, which really sums up the more recent work that we've been doing. And then that'll, thank you, if we could play that. I don't know who's got control of this. Can somebody, is it Lubango?
Yeah, we're playing the video, but it's not working. Daniel, can you try? Yeah, I can't.
Do I have any chance of recovering that somewhere among our?
So while I just want to, I'll explain what Fleet is. It's a new program that we're working on. It's a faith leader environmental advocacy training. And we found that working with congregations was very slow and needed a lot of support. And that we have now been working in the SADC region and in East Africa with faith leadership, not necessarily at the senior level, but Mothers Union leaders and other smaller groups where there's a leader who needs some kind of environmental and faith training. And we've been working in small groups of up to 20 participants and having 3 or 4 day workshops with them to really engage with, to identify their issues, and then through that help them build an understanding of together how they can engage with these issues and bring them to their communities. So it's been a wonderful movement, and we now have over 100 faith leaders who've been trained in these small groups and who now have a network where they communicate with each other and across the whole faith spectrum. So not only is it about environment, but it's also about peace building. So this training this video, I'm sorry I can't show it to you, it's just a little clip about some of the leaders who participated in these programs and how what they've shared. But we can just go back to the screen and I'll just finish off the screen sharing if we can. No. Lost that. So maybe I just need to conclude by really saying that we found this whole process of working together inspiring, and thank you. That's okay. We could just move down from that video. And I'd just like to quote, these are some of the fleet participants who've done things like this Soraya, who's developed a township peace garden and a food garden at her mosque. And the next one is a bishop in Tanzania who's developed a schools program and tree planting. And then finally, a wonderful Catholic leader who has been working with a children and people's clowns program to really try and raise information and knowledge about the environment. And finally, the last slide. One of the things we do is try to provide resources to help support the leaders and the communities around the region that we're working with. Thank you very much.
So do you still see the PowerPoint? No, it's
No.
gone. No. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, that's rather unfortunate that Lubang left. So yeah, now we have only, I think, 10 minutes each for the discussion and for drafting an action plan as to what could be done next. So yeah, I'll have to take over from here. I guess I'm supposed to take notes during this session. So. Dietrich, I see your hand.
Yes, I will try. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Fine.
This is Dietrich Werner. I'm an ordained minister and senior theological advisor to Bread for the World, a Christian development organization in Berlin. Warm greetings to both Kate and also Jeff. It is very good to hear you again. We have supported SAFCEI since several years, and we are very proud on the work you are doing, both on local, on regional and national level in South Africa. My comments is related to the issue which Jeff has also pointed to, and that links it to the major presentation François Engelbrecht has done earlier this day, because the very frightening scientific data he has shared signifies a sense of emergency and urgency in terms of common interfaith action to preserve South Africa from a hothouse Earth scenario which is unfolding if global climate change cannot be halted below 1.5 degrees. And the prospects he has illustrated are so irritating and so serious that I have the feeling, while recognizing all the important efforts SAFCEI is doing in the area of local training, local campaigning, regional efforts, and so on, I wonder whether more emphasis should be given also to the international advocacy level. And I was dreaming, because I have worked in international ecumenism, I've worked with WCC and others, and I wonder whether SAFCEI could play a role in bringing together major leaders, both of South African churches as well as other faith leaders, to produce a South African Kairos for Creation document in highlighting some of the prospects which François Engelbrecht has given us this morning, and also indicating that the window of opportunity, the time window we still have is very, very short. If it is not for the next 5 years, I think the more serious mitigation scenario which he has indicated is quite likely to be put into reality, and these are irreversible changes on the livelihood situations in the kind of how nutrition is produced, because South Africa will not be the same, and we will have a completely different landscape and scenario in South Africa. That is some of the words I think he was using. So I sense a kind of a deep urgency for an international call of a South African Kairos for Creation document, which ought to be given both into the international ecumenical movement as it is preparing for the World Assembly in 2022, which is now postponed, and also to mainly players in civil society, both in the US context and in the Chinese context, because taking up what Jeff has just indicated, without China and without the US, we will not have a solution globally. This needs a readjustment of our advocacy approaches. And if we would have a strong call, like a 3 to 5 pages Kairos, South African Kairos for Creation document in the line of the South African Kairos document series, you know all about it, that would dramatize kind of a situation where we need more solidarity, more interface connectivity, also coming from South Africa, but leaving not South Africa alone, because I have the feeling we are moving towards a scenario in which South Africa is being sacrificed because the world is not moving ahead in terms of dramatic and very serious steps in curbing CO2 emissions. And we cannot allow, this is an issue of global climate justice, we cannot allow for South Africa and the whole of the African continent to be sacrificed in terms of the future generation. So I have a great passion for this, and that is why I'm asking, don't we need to scale up the international advocacy in this area to shed some light on this emerging hothouse scenario in South Africa? That was briefly what I was trying to point to. Many thanks for listening.
Yes, so it's we only have 10 minutes left, but as I see this discussion going very quickly into what steps could be taken, what concrete steps are they that yeah, faith communities and religious actors, leaders can take. I just say we keep on going and yeah, think of an agenda of concrete steps that can, yeah, somehow
Daniel, can I?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to share very quickly something that we are very interested in, and also taking advantage of the movement that was sparked by Greta. And as you know, we're a child-focused organization. So one of the things we would like to do very intentionally is to start engaging children and young people a little bit more intensively, to be part of this movement for the planet. And I think that religious leaders and the religious groups at the local level are a very effective way for starting a mobilization in that sense. So I'm proposing that could be one of the points for action in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, colleagues. May I come in here?
Yeah, I think there's nobody else who wants to speak right now, so please do.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks, Kate, for the important presentation and the spot on. Well, I am from UNEP. For those who do not know me, I am the director of the Faith for Earth initiative. And as Kate mentioned and everybody else, we do have now a global momentum for encouraging and inspiring and engaging faith organizations and faith leaders in the work of environmental stewardship. Now, the point of whether these organizations are actually active and effective at the local level, this is a great question, and we need to consider it from its practicality and how we should approach it. As you know, the UN organizations are global intergovernmental organizations, mainly working on the policy level. Some organizations do have offices at the local levels, but mainly the work is kept at the global engagement process. As in our initiative, one of the objectives is to work with faith leaders in advocating the important role that faith leaders can contribute into or in the environmental area. And then the second objective is to work with investment institutions of faith organizations to sustainably invest in natural resources rather than the brown economy that we are all suffering from. And the third objective is to work on the scientific and knowledge consortium between theologians and what the religions scriptures say and what sciences say. Now, what we actually would like to see is a genuine partnership between the UN global efforts and faith organizations' local actions. So while we work on policies and so on, we want to partner with faith organizations, and this is the only way that it will work at the local level, because the UN cannot open an office in each locality or each government or each country and so on. So the partnerships that we are creating with faith organizations is very important. And this is what we have started. We have started at the global level, but now we're moving into country level. We are taking 3 countries as model countries. One of them is Lebanon, the other one is India, and the third one is Bosnia and Herzegovina. What we are trying to do is come up with local national action plans where these action plans can be taken into the local level, the localities, the neighborhoods, and so on by the organizations that we are partnering with. So an important component is the partnership that we make with the organizations who are active at the local level. We have on our board, on the board of the UN Task Force on Religion and Sustainable Development, we have 42 faith-based organizations at the level of CEOs. These organizations, most of them have almost in every corner of the world offices. URI, for example, has 110 offices. Religions for Peace has 90-something offices, and so on and so forth. So we are working with them and through them to get to the local communities. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if I may ask a question, if I may ask a question, please. All right.
I'm sure you can ask a question.
Okay, thank you. I was waiting for the moderator to give me a go ahead. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Kate, thank you for your presentation. I think there is also, based on what the latter speaker has just pointed out, I'm interested in Pentecostal participation in your groups to find out how many, in terms of just percentages, how many Pentecostals, African Pentecostal groups are actually involved at a basic level, are knowledgeable and are, involved in advocacy in your experience within your area.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your talk. We have a real challenge in that engagement. It's the mainline churches that have a kind of social justice program already that have brought in the eco-justice voice. So hearing your talk, it's just fascinating and it's really important, but we have to adapt in order to understand the different perspectives. And so no, we have a few pastors from churches in other parts of Southern Africa, but they have a particular passion. But no, we don't. So hearing your talk was very informative and very helpful. Thank you.
And maybe as a follow-through, maybe as a way forward, then one of the action points should be to engage, as Philip has correctly said, Pentecostalism is a huge movement. I don't want to say a denominational affiliation. It's a huge movement within Africa. And whether and in various forms, whether it manifests in forms of the neo-Pentecostals, which is mega churches, that type, charismatic churches, or in terms of classical Pentecostals, these are huge movements. And there is a need to educate. There is a need to create awareness. I do not remember in my years of being involved, very few years, 20-something years in ministry, I don't even remember a sermon, one sermon on ecology, on eco theology, in Pentecostal platforms, precisely because of that, a human-centered, where man is the center and not ecology. There is vibes here and there in the thinking of the kingdom of God, but that is not, you don't hear it strongly. You still hear personal salvation. You don't hear, a holistic. So I would love to invite you to help us, and maybe we can dialogue, Kate, and see how do we engage Pentecostalism with groups like yourselves on advocacy, and also just on creating the theology. Of course, that's the other group, but I wanted to come here because I wanted to hear the action, because,
Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope that's something that can come out of this. It's really exciting.
I hope so too.
Could I just add that I too was so encouraged by what you said, because we haven't been able to communicate with the Pentecostals, and so now it's that fantastic we can really open up, because as you say, it's a very large segment of faith in Africa and it's Latin America, around the world now. It's very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I got kicked out of my network somehow, so that's why I just disappeared. I'm sorry for that. Well, the time is over by now, so I don't know if anybody still wants to add something. I think that should be still possible, but maybe after that we should go back to the other meeting room, if that's all right with you.
I'm just wondering, Dieter, I don't know whether, Dietrich, I mean, I think what you were saying is really important, and I think we need to be encouraged and inspired to produce this kairos, and so I think we must set that as a goal, and having all of you who participated would be really helpful to add some thoughts to it.
Just as a brief reaction, I would be very happy also to be in dialogue with all of those who are interested in this. You know that we had started the so-called Wuppertal process on demanding for a global decade for healing of creation, in having in mind the emergency of global climate justice and failing efforts of some national governments in the world. And Ernst Conradi from South Africa was part of this, as well as Kate and others. And it would be excellent to complement this by a distinct South African voice, because that was becoming even more clear by the presentation of François Engelbrecht, that the situation of warming above the land masses is much more severe and very serious than it is on global sea masses or the sea level, because he has pointed out that it is 4 degrees more than is the average. And that is not known in many countries and governments in the West, but it should be known. So to take some of his data and to develop a South African Kairos for creation would be a unique contribution also to the ongoing process in preparing for the next World Council of Churches Assembly, as well as could be a kind of a document which would be taken up by Faith for Earth and other international networks. So I would really hope for it.
Yeah. I see that Peter Danku wants to ask a question, so maybe we do that.
Yes, thank you so much. I will be very brief. My name is Peter Danku, representing EU CORD, the European Christian Organization for Relief and Development, network of European relief and development agencies inspired by Christian values. And we are based in Brussels, and I'm the advocacy coordinator of the organization, being also a member of PART. So what I wanted to raise, and I also at the same time would like to express my gratitude to the speakers. What I actually raised during the previous session towards Ms. Matsubane, what I'm actually missing is a clear outcome on an advocacy roadmap. So how we could actually explore possibilities and identify policy recommendations and advocacy entry points on these new eco paradigms from a Pentecostal perspective. And given the fact that now this time we focus on the Southern African region, as much as I know, just to give an example, the African Union has its legislative body based in Midrand, Johannesburg, South Africa, which is actually the legislative platform of the African Union. And I'm just trying, to think in an African way compared to the EU architecture in terms of the legislative body as the European Parliament and the executive body, which is the European Commission. So is there a potential to compile a sort of advocacy roadmap to, as I mentioned, for example, to approach the African Union, the African Parliament, and we don't even need to leave the borders of South Africa or remaining in South Africa. I mean, I'm not from there, but I have some connections. The African Christian Democratic Party. Honestly, Steve Swart, one of the MPs from Cape Town, I've had some conversations with him, but I have never heard him giving a speech or addressing the National Assembly on these topics. So how could we sort of use the ignition key towards both national politicians and Pan-African political decision-making bodies to, as mentioned, explore advocacy opportunities? I think that would be an important outcome to identify and to jot down and to create a sort of advocacy document on it. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, so I think as far as I got everything everybody said, yeah, there is a strongly felt need to somehow work better together with political bodies, with scientists also from the side of religious actors and communities, and yeah, that's the impression I get, that there are many possibilities that just haven't really been explored so far, and that this needs to be done. I don't know if anybody wants to add something on that, please go ahead. But otherwise, I just suggest that we end this meeting here and go back to the main room, if that's okay. Yeah? All right. So then, see you again in a minute.